are wondering why I am letting my camera crew film me while cutting a log, I assure you there's a good purpose. Anyone traveling in the wild will probably appreciate the chance of traveling light. Of course, this means improvising and replacing the things you don't have with you by something from nature. Surprisingly, you can also replace such crucial items such as a cooking stove without the need to make a regular campfire. And the device I'm making for this purpose is called the Swedish log candle. And this log will present its basic component. I will start by splitting the log into quarters. To split the log into quarters, I'm going to use a technique called batoning, which means hammering my knife into the piece of wood and cause it to split. You can see there's a crack opening. So now I can already start hammering another piece of wood to enlarge this hole even more and allow the log to split. So those would be the two halves. Now I need to transform them into quarters. Try to be exact when you're doing this, because afterwards it will save you much effort. It's a good thing to manage your quarters in the way they pass into each other, because then we will tie the whole together to make the log candle. Now that we have our quarters, we need to remove this part which is limited by the central edge, and if we do this on all the quarters, this will form our hollow inside the candle. It's not always easy to split the wood, mainly when it has knots, so I strongly encourage having an axe with you or some similar instrument at all times. Now before I tie this together, I will need to make a small side depression in two of these pieces. This side depression will supply air to the fire and also enable us to light it. So when I put the two parts together, I obtain a hole. So after much chopping and deliberation, we finally obtained the desired configuration with a central hollow in the log and the side aperture going into it, through which we can light the fire inside and also supply air to keep the fire burning. Now before proceeding to light this candle, we need to tie the four pieces together once again. It would be nonsense to use some synthetic string because of damage risk to it through the fire burning inside. Instead, we will use something commonly found around us in nature. You know, it's interesting that the more useful a plant gets for us, usually the more defenses it also has. Like this blackberry with all of its nasty thorns. But that's also the answer, because we can use the stem as a perfect withy. It's principally a ready-made natural cordage for use. So I'll just shave the thorns off the entire length of this stem. Clear the leaves, any sprouts that emerge. So afterwards we will actually be able to grab onto it and do something with it. With the thorns it would be a real complication. Okay, so those would be our two blackberry withies ready for use. I can now tie the prepared blackberry stems onto the log, one below our side hole and one above. You may want to use older stems for this purpose, not fresh ones like I just did, because the fresh ones are too brittle still to be used in this way. So our log candle is now holding together relatively well, and I'll just cut away the ends of this. Unfortunately, these withies are a bit too stiff, so tightening them to really fix the parts of the logs in place is a problem. But we can go around it by placing some of the splinters which we saved earlier beneath these withies to help us increase the tension and holding everything as it should be. I'll place one piece also onto the upper, below the upper withy, and after making the top of this candle horizontal, we are in principle ready for lighting. I will need to make a small depression in the ground into which I will fix the log candle to make it stand firmly for cooking. Like so. And I will need to place some dry, small, thin twigs in the central hollow, which will help initiate the burning process. So I'll just stuff them in there, beginning by small ones into the hollow, and press them down to the level of the lower opening. Don't cram too many in there, because otherwise you will block the inflow of air and the fire will go out rather than burn along. That should be about enough to ignite our fire. And the method I will use to ignite today's fire is called flint and steel. It has several components which are not that easy to make in nature. It works basically by striking a piece of iron or pyrite against a piece of flint or any other quartz substance. There are many shapes of the fire steel, which is probably the best source of sparks, and the C shape, which I'm holding in my hand, is probably the best of them. Of course, to light a fire with such a delicate object as a spark, we need some very special material, and this material that I will use is called tinder fungus. By extracting a layer of the tinder fungus, which is growing on dead trees, one can obtain a sort of microfleece-like texture which catches the spark if we are successful and begins to glow. And as soon as it does so, we can blow this glowing piece of this tinder fungus into flames. I will first roughen the surface of the tinder fungus with my knife. Just slightly, so that the sparks don't fall off that easy. I will prepare dry grass, which will serve to increase the flame. And I will place the flint on my left knee, the tinder fungus above it. I will use my fingers to expose the prepared area for the acceptance of the spark. And now with the other hand I will simply strike the steel and try to drop the sparks onto the tinder fungus and set it alight. This may take some time. Yes, we have it. So you can see this small spot increasing in size, and we need to rapidly cut it out, because otherwise our entire tinder fungus will burn down and we won't be able to use it again. So I'll just cut it out or rip it out. And I will drop this glowing piece into a depression in my dry grass and begin blowing on it. So finally we have achieved ignition. So I will first create a small source fire here to help us in maintaining a small flame, assisting us with the lighting of the candle. So, and from this flame we'll ignite a small bundle of the branches and try to set the candle alight. That would mean the ignition of our log candle. Now we have to let the fire expand in it and eventually ignite the inner faces of the log. And as soon as it's so far, we can start to cook by placing a pot on the upper side of it. Once the flames come through the top, I can place my cooking pot on the candle and wait for my water to get warm. The tea is cooking. So now you'll have to excuse me because I want to savor this delicious pine needle tea with my camera crew. Come on in, folks.
Delicious.
Urval kann man nur